Afternoon and welcome to our session for the collegiate division today. Our next guest is Dr. Dale Bazan, and he's going to speak about applications of psychology and music teaching. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Dale Bazan.
All right, there's a couple polls that I'd like to have just so I know who's in the audience. What level you teach as the first poll. I'm going to start that one. You would do that, and I'll see. This will give me some better indication of what sort of scenarios I can spell out. All right, I'm going to end that poll. So that gives me looks like we're all K-12, 512, high school, good, and some college post-secondary, awesome. I'm going to end that poll and give you one more, which area you might teach or have teach or will teach. Where's that other one? Here we go. Start poll and publish. Looking like lots of band right now. That's good. Oh, some general music, excellent. All right, so mostly band. So I'll gear most of my kind of descriptions when I have to tell anecdotes, and that's in a way to kind of attach the psychology to other things. And let me now go to my PowerPoint. Where's that? Slides. And start this. All right, so I'm Dale Bazan, University of Louisiana, Lafayette. My background was teaching band for many years before I went to PhD, and then was the instrumental music ed specialist at University of Nebraska, moved up to Alaska until their budget balance went out, and then came down to University of Louisiana. Happy to be here. So I'm talking about, so I've got to go next. There we go. Applications of psychology and music teaching. What I've found a lot is a lot of programs, talking to a lot of music teachers and the undergrads I work with now. They get like one educational psychology course, and it goes through very quickly and doesn't always connect to music. So I've received as well a lot of certain questions that I'm going to refer to and try to answer them through a kind of psychological vein. First, let's look at this. So, Clarence Diggs, I thought it was you. Never learned your scales or modes, did you, young man? Just screwed around in class, as I recall. Now, look at you, you tone-deaf little weasel. Ha, 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 what's that chord you're butchering? Oh, my God, it's Mr. Blanchard, my old music teacher. Well, this is not the way we want to build up self-esteem and self-efficacy and self-worth, and maybe that's why poor Clarence ended up on the street corner. We don't know, but we're going to look at some different teaching strategies. So why psychology? Why should we concern ourselves with that? Well, being a music teacher requires more than just knowing a lot about music. It requires knowing a lot about teaching and learning, which requires understanding a lot about human beings. And that's the whole point of psychology, understanding human beings, what makes them tick, etc. My old friend, who's much more into teaching psychology and music than me, Bob Woody, put it like this. Psychology offers insights into humankind that can be very useful to musicians. Psychology promotes understanding of people, how they perceive and process the world around them, how they feel emotion, how they learn, and how they can skillfully perform certain behaviors, just to name several areas of interest within psychology. After all, music is made by human beings for human beings. There may be musical types of sounds out in nature, but it's really becomes music when it's by and for human beings. Musical instruments, including the voice, are important components of our musical world, and they produce the pitches and rhythms that make up sounded music. Accordingly, advanced music students receive much instruction in music theory and technical training, how to operate instruments. Although performance technique and knowledge of music theory are essential to be musicians, people are the most important elements of music. People are responsible for the emotion of music. Therefore, aspiring musicians really cannot optimally advance their craft without considering the insights. And I'm referring to a couple of books that I'm going to link real quick in chat. He's updating this one. I'll put this link in the chat. Number 1, number 2. I'm going to screen share for a second. So, we get that window effect there. This one is Psychology for Musicians, Understanding and Acquiring the Skills, really useful resource, and where that quote comes from. And he's updating this book as we speak, so it should be a new version. It's getting a little old. And this one, Becoming a Real Musician, Inspiration and Guidance for Teachers and Parents of Musical Kids, where he takes some psychological precepts and goes and applies them to how to develop talented musicians. So I'm going to turn my screen off before we get that tunnel vision and go back to the slides. And should be at my slides. Go back here. Oops, stopped it. Start. So start there. I went back, pressed the back button by accident. And slides. Okay, so we're about expanding minds. I read this, Calvin says, I read this little library book you got me. What did you think of it? It really made me see things differently. It's given me a lot to think about. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And Calvin goes, it's complicating my life. Don't get me anymore. This shows a fixed mindset, and of course, Calvin's comfortable where he is, but we need to stretch him, and look at some ways that we can do that. So the objectives of this webinar are answer some questions I often get. How can I motivate my students? How can I help my students desire to achieve more? How can I get my students to practice more? How can I get them to enjoy music more? Well, we're going to look at three kind of categories. We're going to look at stuff on motivation and achievement, how to create positive emotions and experiences, unlike old Clarence there playing on the street corner with Mr. Blanchard cursing at him, and practice and skill acquisition. These seems to be some concerns I get from a lot of teachers, so I thought I'd put some psychological precepts in it, all building to success of the student. Calvin's great. Bill Watterson must have been a psychiatrist, but here's Calvin again. What are you doing? Being cool. You look more like you're being bored. The world bores you when you're cool. So how are we going to motivate Calvin? Well, we know that there's two types of primary motivations, intrinsic, extrinsic. So in intrinsic motivation, it's basically the student, the person, likes doing the activity for what they're doing. You don't need to give them any stars or stickers. Those might be icing on the cake, but they'll do music for music's sake. On the other hand, we have extrinsic motivation, where a student, like Calvin in the last comic strip, needs to get out of his coolness, and we need to break him out of that thing. So we might use some techniques that can extrinsic motivation, and we'll look at operant conditioning for that. Another theory that's come out looks a little broader than operant conditioning is reversal theory. This looks at fixed mindsets, or whether those mindsets are changeable, and whether we can have dominant traits in a certain domain. So I'm going to break those out, continue now. So the 4 quadrants of operant conditioning, this might be review for you. But we do a lot of things in music teaching based on this. It's actually kind of getting old in the tooth. But we do things like add good stuff to increase behaviors. We want students to raise their hands. We want students to participate. We want students to do well on tests. So we reward them by giving them good stuff. That can be one of the best is specific praise. Praise your students. Another one is to add some sort of what we call behavior modification, which could be stars, points. Grades can be a positive motivator. On the other hand, we have something so we want to encourage good stuff, or we want to, so that's reinforcement. So reinforcement is about the increasing of a behavior. All right. Punishment gets kind of coined wrong, because it's actually what we're trying to do is decrease behaviors. So we can do that by delaying good stuff. You have a timeout. You're grounded because you didn't do well on the test, and I want you to do, or to decrease a behavior, yelling at the other person and say, well, you can't do that, so you're going to have to go to timeout. You won't get recess. We're delaying the good stuff. On the other hand, we can add bad stuff or delay bad stuff. So positive punishment would be to say, with Boogie here, the pull on the collar. Well, if he's pulling on the collar, then gets a no, then we are adding some negative stimulus to him, and Boogie will say, oh, I'm not going to stop pulling on the rope. I don't want that to happen. And negative reinforcement, where we take away bad stuff, like you won't get an electric shock, you won't go to prison, as long as you do these things that we want you to do, increase a behavior. For example, be a good citizen. So these you see all over music education, especially up here. And I would suggest that this is probably the best quadrant to work with providing praise to your students, making sure that every student knows noticed when they make any consequential gain. And this can be really good for extrinsic motivation. I have a video that puts this in place. See how this works? It's not there. Where did it go? Uh-oh, they're gone. Do you know where those would have went? I thought I uploaded them.
I think it's because you left the room and came back.
Oh, I came back, right. Okay, well,
Was it the videos?
Yeah, the videos.
Which one do you want? And I'll push play.
So do the Big Bang operant conditioning.
You got it.
Are you finished?
Well, thank you. How thoughtful. Would you like a chocolate?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Oh, sorry, Sheldon. I almost sat in your spot.
Did you? I didn't notice. Have a chocolate.
Thank you.
You're here a lot now.
Oh, am I talking too much? I'm sorry. Zip.
Thank you. Chocolate?
positive reinforcement.
Oh, hey, Kim.
Uh-oh. We don't want this behavior.
You know what? Hold on. Let me take this in the hall.
So here's the stare down. Negative reinforcement. And chocolate. Did the right thing.
So they got to replace you with one.
Okay. I know what you're doing.
Really?
Yes. You're using chocolates as positive reinforcement for what you consider correct behavior.
Very good. Chocolate?
No, Sheldon, you can't train my girlfriend like a lab rat.
Actually, it turns out I can.
Well, you shouldn't.
There's just no pleasing you, is there, Leonard? You weren't happy with my previous approach to dealing with her, so I decided to employ operant conditioning techniques, building on the works of Thorndike and B.F. Skinner. Yet by this time next week, I believe I can have her jumping out of a pool, balancing a beach ball on her nose.
No, this has to stop now.
I'm not suggesting we really make her jump out of a pool. I thought the bazinga was implied. I'm just tweaking her personality, just sanding off the rough edges, if you will.
No, you're not sanding Penny.
Are you saying that I am forbidden from applying a harmless, scientifically valid protocol that will make our lives better?
Yes, you're forbidden.
Bad, Leonard. You know, using positive reinforcement techniques, I could train that behavior out of her in a week.
No.
If you let me use negative reinforcement, I can get it done before we go to bed.
You're not squirting her in the face with water.
No, of course not. We're talking very mild electric shocks. No tissue damage whatsoever.
Forget it.
Oh, come on. You can't tell me that you're not intrigued about the possibility of building a better girlfriend.
I'm not. Penny's qualities, both good and bad, are what make her who she is.
You mean like that high-pitched, irritating laugh?
Yes.
You wouldn't prefer a throaty chuckle?
You're not changing how Penny laughs.
No, that would be incongruous. No, I was going to lower the whole voice to a more pleasing register.
Sorry, guys. That girl is freaky.
Come again?
Freaky.
Freaky?
Yeah, freaky.
Have a chocolate.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to make some warm milk and then turn in. I trust if you two are planning on engaging in amorous activities, you'll keep the decibel level to a minimum.
Of course.
Thank you.
You're muted.
Yes, I put this so there wouldn't be any echo. I wasn't sure it happened on my end or your end, but anyways, that's a good example of some of the techniques that we use in school and why we use them, because of Skinner and Thorndike and all the behaviorists. But we've, as I said, those are kind of old, antiquated ideas, and although they're right and commonplace in music teaching, and again, work up in the positive reinforcement. So along comes in the 70s, Apter and Smith started looking at a broader way of why people move from different states, and Colin Gardner updated it in 2014. So they looked at, there's four basic domains based on whether you are motivated by goals that are for a means and an ends. Are you motivated by the goals or the fun? Are you goal-oriented, or are you fun, or you just want the enjoyment or play of a show? Or your students? Are you? Is it about conforming and belonging to the rules and being part of whatever construct or group you're with, or is it restrictive, where you kind of go against the rules, and then you'll move towards a rebellious, wanting freedom, wanting change, wanting flexibility. Transactions, are motives based in power or in care? Is it about being in control and having ability and mastery over something? Or is it about sympathy, relationships, and care? And then finally, relationships. Are you motivated by your own needs, self-oriented, or on others? What they propose is that these are like two sides of a coin. And at any one time, a person lives in these sort of things. They might be very goal-oriented, but they don't like constraints and rules. They're after mastery in whatever activity they're going at, and it's because of others. On other times, those same people will what called reverse. And there's certain things that cause these reversals to flip from wanting to be serious to wanting to have fun, and vice versa. And they can be based on an amount of arousal within a domain. So if you get to a certain point of seriousness where you're serious, more serious, and things to keep on peaking, eventually the mind wants to flip to a different condition, and it'll flip directly to playful, trying to find more fun in the activity, etc. So this is another theory that goes into why people have certain emotions, why they're motivated to do certain things, and what their personality types are about. You tend to have a dominance in certain sides of these coins, but a teacher, a person on the outside understanding this theory, would be able to change the conditions to pull students out of one condition or another. For example, if a student is overly serious, this can get detrimental over time, and we want to add a little bit of sense of fun to things and balance things out. How a reversal works a little bit more, let's look at if you're in an anxiety avoidance mode. We don't want to be anxious, we don't want to be nervous, we don't want to be too challenged, etc. So at that point, the student's desired state is relaxation. But if we increase the arousal create more energy, create more excitement in what we're teaching, we can switch a student flip the coin from an anxiety avoidance mode to an exciting seeking mode. So instead of living in boredom, now we move to excitement. So relaxation and excitement are both fine, but they're on separate sides of any of those domains. So that's a little bit about reversal theory, which has to do with motivation and why certain personality types become dominant. Next, this is a big one that I always talk about in undergrad, is flow. Csikszentmihalyi back in the 70s brought this one up. And this has to do with challenge level and skill level. And I think the band directors have to deal with this a lot. I know when I was teaching high school band back in Alaska, balancing a band where you have students with, weaker fundamentals, and then your first chair, your all-staters, etc. How do you balance that is always a challenge, because we know that we want to live in this world of this area of flow. You've experienced this when you lose track of time, when you're in an activity and all of a sudden you look at the clock and go, oh, wow, I never knew I was doing that for so long. One of the best examples I can give of this is video games. Really good video games are masterful at this. They keep increasing the challenge level as you pass levels, as you defeat your big bosses, And as you get more used to the game, so your thumbs and trigger fingers, you get used to the controls, you get used to how your weapons or whatever work, and your skill level continues to increase while the challenge level keeps going up every time you pass a level. And they keep you right in there. And that's how you can all of a sudden at 6 o'clock in the morning and you go, wow, I didn't know I was playing that for 7 hours. How do we do that in music? How can we get students into here? Well, it's about balancing, again, that challenge and level, a skill level. If you have a student who's not practiced as much, hasn't paid as much attention, and is starting to follow behind, they're going to start having what would be considered a low skill level. And even as you switch move to page 6 and 7 of the method book, the challenge level may remain low, and the student will have a sense of apathy. If the challenge level starts ramping up and they start falling behind, what they start experiencing is worry, and if too high, then anxiety. And these traits, of course, are what lead to dropouts of our students. So we need to think about how we can move them out of these kind of areas of apathy where I don't care, and boredom where this just doesn't arouse me. And move them over here. And it's about balancing that challenge level and bringing and being sensitive to the skill level and pushing that higher. And as that skill builds, then we need to ramp up the challenge level. So this is another theory that is applies in music teaching. So to enable, we need the students focused on concentrating on the moment. We need them to have a combined action and awareness so they're alert to what's going on and that they're active, they're engaged. If they're not engaged, then we can't achieve flow. That they see self-reflection. They stop thinking about themselves and they start focusing on the activity and what they're doing. If we start, then this is kind of counteractive to some other theories we'll come up with later, like meaningful learning, that suggests that we need self-assessment. If during an activity a student is thinking too much about the nuts and bolts of what they're doing, then they will not achieve that higher level of involvement and engagement. So we can actually undermine their ability to focus on the activity if we give them too many things to think about. They need to feel in control of the situation. So it can't be out of hand, it can't be too hard for them. It has to be just hard enough. And sense of time is lost then, and they will be intrinsically motivated. They're not doing it for any praise, any sense of fulfillment. They're just doing it because they really are focused on the activity and feel successful in it. And Kendra Cherry added, later in maybe the 90s or so, that they have to receive immediate feedback on success. Can't wait 2 weeks or a quarter for the report card. They need it immediately after the activity, or the activity themselves gives that feedback, that they have self-efficacy in the activity. That means they have a sense that they can accomplish it, and that the only need is the activity. Don't sense other needs. This one's going to lead into our next theory. So if they start thinking about other needs that they have, then they will fall out of this timelessness and this sense of real immersion in the activity, and the activity itself is the reward. This brings up Maslow's hierarchy. You've probably seen this pyramid. If our students are hungry, they haven't had enough sleep, haven't had enough water, the band room's too cold, band room's too warm. Those are physiological needs, and they can't get up to involvement in activity or anything else up here before those are satisfied. Now you see these arrows over here. The bottom four are actually called deficiency needs. So as you provide them, your basic needs, your psychological needs of belongingness and esteem, As you achieve these and have your needs met, your motivation actually decreases. So as you satisfy food and water, you have less need for the next one and even less motivation to pursue the next one. But as soon as you get to this top tier, now it becomes a growth need. Once you get students up into there where they're self-actualizing, that they're trying to achieve one's full potential, that they're involved in creative activities and creating things and really involved in artistry, then their motivation starts increasing as they go up because they're interested in growth. They've moved out of whatever fixed mindset where Calvin was sitting under the tree to wanting to do more, and they start becoming more goal-oriented and motivated to do stuff. They can't get up here unless these things are met. That's why a lot of schools, for example, will provide nourishment or free breakfast first thing in the morning. We need to make sure that they belong and feel involved in the classroom. If they're alienated or they're left out, they're going to start moving back and paying attention to their needs rather than the activity at hand. So that's another theory. Here's one that I get a lot of questions about, performance anxiety. So this time, Roger's at the back in percussion section. This time I won't screw up. I won't. And Roger screws up. He forgot he needs two cymbals to make it work, right? So worried about not screwing up, he forgot to do it right. So what about performance anxiety? Well, what causes this? Your body's reactions to stress, either perceived internal, things that you created in your own mind, or external, meaning something's coming and causing it. And whatever the person, like, your students backstage warming up, you can always see the nervousness and how much anxiety and things are going on in their mind. It's because their fight and flight response in their amygdala is instinctually triggering. And what's happening is that's pumping adrenaline and other hormones into the body. Now, adrenaline is great if you're trying to run away from a tiger, but it's not very good when you need to be calm and not have the shakes and the tremors and don't want butterflies, or even some students you may have experienced almost physically debilitating. Like I've had students who have to run off stage because they got to go vomit because they're so paralyzed and crippled with fear of whatever's going on. This has a little bit to do with psychologist Vygotsky that talks about zone of proximal development, and it relates back to flow as well, is that if the challenge level and the activity is too out of control, and that, you've seen that word, that self-control, that ability to sense that we are capable of succeeding. If it's too out of the kid's hands, we know that this performance anxiety is going to increase. So solutions, we need more sense of skill. So we need the student to feel like they have more things to bring to bear, or we need to desensitize to risk. So we can build them up and say, we need a 1. We need to we want that trophy. We want to beat the high school marching band down the street. Or, on the other hand, and if we were going to do that, then we better have a lot of skill. Or we can say, don't worry about the outcomes. Just do your best. Don't worry about that. And I know that we've done everything we can to practice to this point, and you're going to do fine. So we're desensitizing risk. Problem is that without a sense of accomplishment, going back to reversal theory, and operant conditioning as well, that if there's a sense that we have achieved something, that we do not get that reward if we undermine that too much. Performance is certainly not a physical threat. Nothing's chasing you. So we need to focus on what matters. Focus on musicality rather than self or audience. For example, Focus on the tone you're making. Focus on the phrasing. Focus on the structure of the piece. Focus on the emotions you're trying to convey with your music. Try not to focus on yourself or the audience. Focus on the music. So as soon as they start looking at themselves in relation to the audience and start feeling judged and move out of the music at hand, they start moving into more performance anxiety. Or that's at least what the research is saying. Of course, if we have good practice habits, we're going to bring more skill level to things, and we might not have as much performance anxiety. And if we're having solid practice sessions where we are experiencing that sense of flow, where we have challenge level and we're increasing that skill level to bring to bear on it, that we are going to have things like meaningful learning happening. You can look up Ansabel for information on that. He has some stuff, just do a Google search. And consider intelligent music practice. I've got a couple links I'm going to give you right now from Bob Duke on intelligent music practice. Let me give you the first one. This is his website on intelligent music practice. And this is his book that you might want to learn some more about what makes important or useful or good practice habits. He was working with, he's at UT Austin, and he started working with the psychology department. And you can see on his website videos of some of the applied professors at UT Austin practicing. And they analyzed what was making effective practice, because the faculty do not have a lot of time to practice, or if they practice too much, what happens is they start undermining their performance because they blow their, if they're trumpet, they blow their lips before they get to the gig, kind of thing. I was even talking to Doc Severinsen, and that we asked him what is his practice regime, what is his daily routine. He says, well, he travels so much. The first thing he does is he makes sure that he's nourished. The second thing he does is he works out physically first thing in the morning to make sure that's out of the way. Then he practices in the stairwells of hotels. He likes the acoustics of the hotels. I mean, can you imagine you wake up in the morning after he's done his workout routine, start hearing a trumpet in the hotel, call the front desk? I think they'll let Doc get away with that. But he does things like practice just long tones and lip flexibility exercises. Doesn't really practice licks and patterns or music in whole. He usually takes care of that during warm-ups or band rehearsals. Doesn't really take any notes or anything with him. It's all fundamentals when he's practicing, and it's always focused. Bob Duke says that intelligent music practice is effective music practice that illustrates the connections between strategies that work and the underlying mechanisms of the brain that explain their function in human memory. So he was working with the psychology department because he wanted to see what was happening psychologically with music practice. We need to build self-assessment and self-regulation skills in our students so that they go home knowing what to practice, how to practice, what to look for, and how to self-improve. And that practice should integrate all components of music production. Should not be just the nuts and bolts learning the rhythms and the notes, but at every time they should be always thinking about expressive inflection, about musical phrasing, about emotion in the music as well. He says without this thing, this last thing where the students are always thinking about the musicality, they are making their practice sessions less efficient because they aren't activating all parts of the brain. So that's the basics of his intelligent music practicing. All right, so those are the basic, some tentpoles, just showing you, 5 or 6 different theories that relate directly to our music teaching. And I'd like to turn it over to any comments, or I was going to spend some time, there was a video on reversal theory but I skipped that for time's sake as we're getting a little bit on. It's about a 5-minute thing. I can always go back to that if we do have time and they want to know more about, yeah, we can put that in chat. So I have a student that does not have, typically known as trouble student by different teachers. Tried talking to him and letting him know that he is actually doing well when he tries and could be a good leader. He responded that no one should look up to him because being bad and not doing well runs in his blood. So when those sort of like those self-fulfilling prophecies. And it goes back to kind of that Calvin kind of thing, that students become comfortable where they are. And sometimes if you try to pull them too far, this goes with Vygotsky's zone of proximal development. If you try to pull them too far out of their shell, they'll revert back to what's comfortable, what they're used to. And I've had the same, I think we've all probably had the same experience where a student, you can see that they have some talent, they have some ability if they were just able to exert themselves a little bit more. What I would say is go back to start with the behavior modification with positive reinforcement, giving very small, specific praise, whatever they accomplish, even the smallest thing. Don't wait for big, monumental, increments. Whenever they accomplish one small thing, bring attention to it. You can say, yes, you hear what you did, that, and that'll start building up, hopefully, a sense of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy being their self-worth, their sense of ability to accomplish something in the activity. And then keep ramping up that challenge level as they accomplish things. And I've seen students turn around. I think we all have done that. I'm not sure how we did it. But usually, if we're using psychological principles, I think it has to do with that. I think it has to be building with more intrinsic motivation and self-fulfillment and feeling a sense of belonging, etc. That's my sense, or 2 cents worth. Are there any other questions or comments? I know I kind of went through very quickly on them. I could teach an entire course on this, of course, but of the 3 sessions I submitted, this is the one that was accepted, and I went, hey, great. Not seeing any other questions in there. Let me just do a little screen share and go back to a practice. One of the things that I would suggest with practice is that you have students get out of the sense of just running paces in attrition, I'll get to that, is practice journals rather than practice records. We know that it's not the amount of time that a student puts into practice, it's the quality of the practice. So I have a practice journal linked here. I'll put in the, that I found that I thought was actually pretty good to help students feel like they're accomplishing something in practice. Let me put that down, and then I'll actually ask the question that came up in there. So what would you suggest to combat attrition or senioritis? Okay, well, one of the other topics that I proposed was recruiting and retention. I've published on that a couple times. So attrition is usually subscribed to, well, there's a number of reasons, because one of them, for example, can simply be the change of building. Linda Hartley in Ohio, Dayton, did some research looking at the difference between band programs that start in 5th grade, but then they have to switch buildings for 6th grade, as opposed to band programs that started in 6th grade when the students had switched from middle school. she found that it was actually pretty parallel as for ability level at the end of ninth grade in achievement, but that the attrition rate was less because as they jumped buildings, they lost students. So that can be one of the attritions. Another sense of attrition could go back to Maslow's hierarchy, sense of belonging. Can you build up a sense of cohort or sectional or create some pairs? I find that students in my band programs that felt a little bit more alienated tended to be the ones that I had most concern or wouldn't be there next year. Another one is to go towards building, again, relating to the last question, is building that self-efficacy. The students are going to pursue things that they think are, number one, that they can accomplish and do well in, and avoid things that they aren't. So if they're not getting a lot of praise and a feeling of reward and a feeling of accomplishment in your music program, they're going to be more likely to opt out. And they'll pursue the other electives because in most cases in secondary music, it's elective. They'll pursue sports or they'll pursue basket weaving or whatever other option to avoid the one that they have less sense of ability in. And that could be because you have all staters and they just say, well, I'm not going to measure up to that person. So then they have to start building more self-regulation and self-assessment. If we look back just a couple slides, looking at, where was it? These sense of self things. So if you can use things to bring them up to here towards where they can start making meaningful learning happen. Meaningful learning means that the activities align with their self goals and what they see going on. And senioritis, that's when they're starting to decide how music plays in their life, right? Are they going to continue on with it at all, or is it becoming irrelevant? That's part of the problem with senioritis. There are a lot of, unfortunately, band instruments that end up on eBay or just stay on the shelf and never get picked up, sometimes after graduation day. Other questions? And you can certainly email me on my, if I go back to the start, or I'll just type it in there. Pretty easy to find. Happy to provide any questions or answers or resources, book recommendations if you want to know any more about any of these particular things. But again, the goals of this were, some of the questions I get a lot of how can I motivate my students? How can I help them perform better? How can I help them achieve more in music? And these are some of the basic kind of tentpoles that I found in literature. I think that we have reached probably the end of what I need to say. And if there's anything else, please email me and follow up, and I'll help you out. I think we can probably end it there.
Sure enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Glad to provide a little insight to how the brain works.